Great. Okay, so the way that today's webinar will be structured is that, as I mentioned, we've pre-recorded these sessions again for time zone restrictions and just general availability, etc. So I will be playing the first video, which features Joe and Sarah talking about the Impact Management Project. For those of you who don't know what that is, the Impact Management Project, and Joe will get into this in the video shortly. It's this pretty amazing project that kicked off not that long ago, but has brought together over 2,000 stakeholders to really unify what it means to have an impact. And the lens that has been developed through that ecosystem building and the framework that has come out of that is a very integral one for any of us who are mission-driven organizations and are really trying to understand what is the impact that we're looking to create. So I'm first going to play that video. At any point, if anyone has any questions, just ask me to pause. And again, since we have Joe on the call, we can have her directly answer them. There is also some questions that came up when we were recording the webinar, so we can dig into those as well. Anna, our speaker from B-Lab, is not on the call, but again, we can dig into the video that does have some questions. And with Spring being a certified B Corp, if there's anything, I'm sure I can attempt to answer as best as I can. So I will just figure out how this works for a second so you can see the deck. Give me 1 second. Okay, so that's our deck. I'm going to minimize everyone. So I'm just going to flip to this video. Can everyone see this screen?
Yep, presentation.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm just going to kick off, Joe. This should be when you started with your introduction on the Impact Management Project. So I will try and watch out for the cues that we discussed. Okay. So here we go. Here's our great pre-recorded session that we did with Joe Facco, who's on the call from the Impact Management Project, and Sarah Olson, who is a champion of the Impact Management Project and also has contributed to a lot of the content. It's a really meaty session, so let's kick things off.
Yes. So the IMP was founded in as a grant-funded by impact, we mean a change in a positive or negative outcome for people. Our mission is to co-create some generally agreed impact norms and guidance that is applicable to all types of enterprises. And all of what I will be referencing here can be found on our website, which is available under a Creative Commons license. So I would say that the key takeaway here is that this guidance is available for you to use in your impact management practices. And Sarah and I will signpost to some key resources throughout this webinar. So you can see on this slide that we are the product of a very diverse collaboration of funders and community members. And this was certainly a deliberate effort, with the idea being that if you can get all of these organizations and many more to agree what impact, or to agree on what impact means to them, then we know that we're going in the right direction. Next slide, please. So I previously mentioned the provision of the norms that the IMP has been co-creating since 2016. And I thought it would be helpful to run through these 5 key norms. What, who, how much contribution and risk. These are designed to be simple at the surface, but are incredibly detailed and become data categories that help to set a structure for impact measurement. So that's the first 2 norms. And the third is that by using the 5 dimensions, we can categorize an enterprise and investors' intentions or performance as either acting to avoid harm, benefiting stakeholders, or contributing to solutions. We've also looked at an investor's contribution by classifying their strategy based on how they have contributed to the impact of their assets. And then finally, by combining the ABC and the investor contribution strategies, we can determine the impact class of an investment to understand the intentions and performance of all different types of investments. So let's take a dive with a little more detail on the first 3 of these norms, and the first is the 5 dimensions of impact. These really break down the required data to understand the single impacts experienced by people and the planet. And without data against all of these dimensions, enterprises and investors cannot adequately assess their performance or set goals to improve this performance or compare and then benchmark that performance properly. So I just wanted to run through the 5 and just pick out these examples. So the what category asks what specific outcome is occurring, whether it is positive or negative, and is it important to those experiencing the outcomes. The who category looks at who, or people on the planet, are experiencing those outcomes and how underserved they are in relation to that outcome. And how much explores the scale, the depth, and duration of the outcome. And contribution assesses the enterprise, how the enterprise has contributed to the outcome relative to what may have otherwise happened. And we also explore how an investor contributes to the impact of their investments. And finally, impact risk is assessed using different types and levels of risk in the case that the impact doesn't occur as expected. Could we go to the next slide, please?
Of course.
So through ongoing testing of the practical application of these dimensions, we have created data categories. And these outline in more detail what type of data is needed to make an assessment of the performance data. All of these can be found in more detail under the What is Impact section of the website. So I would encourage you to check that out. But I also included on the next slide the questions that are asked by using the data categories. Could we look at the next slide? Sure. Yep. So these essentially show how the IMP can help leave no stone unturned when assessing impact, looking at the key questions against each category within each dimension. And this can be done for multiple impacts of an enterprise to understand every aspect of its impact performance. Next slide, please. So this slide sets out in a little more detail the ABC categorization that can help understand the intentions of an enterprise or investor. It can also be used to assess performance against any set goals as well. And what's been really interesting about working with the Impact Management Project is that through our consensus building efforts, we've recognized that those falling under the grey round category is just not okay anymore. We want all companies to be at least acting to avoid harm. And the grey box is for anyone who may know or is not sure but might know their impact but aren't doing anything about it. So the first step is acting to avoid harm. And companies may employ this strategy for regulatory reasons or as a part of a desire to act responsibly. And so we're seeing many investors and enterprises to be operating more and more in this space. You can go a step further, which is to benefit stakeholders. And this may be because you believe that businesses can have a positive impact on society and are more proactive in that approach. Or you think that it will sustain the development of the enterprise. That also fits into this. And then there's the final step further that you can go, which is contributing to solutions. This is tackling an important positive outcome for an underserved population in a way that's deep, at scale, and or long-lasting.
So I'm just going to pause there for a second because, Joe, if I remember from the webinar when we had this pre-recording, there was a question that had come around how organizations can think of themselves, whether they need to be falling into any of those specific buckets, i.e. Are you an A type or a B type or a C type, or in your experience and through your research of putting this together, do you see a spectrum of companies that are partly A and partly B? So maybe since you're on the call, if you'd like to address that, that would be great.
Yes, sure. Hi. Hi to everyone as well that's joined the call. To address that question, I remember specifically it was a question that came through from Sarah, who was saying, really, at what point do you classify whether a company is A, B, or C? And I think, aside from this diagram that we have here, that we've got a range of tools to help with that, and also some guides that I will signpost to you later. I'm not sure if it's possible to actually share my screen, but
I can stop share and give you that.
Okay, it might just be the best way to do this.
Sure.
Thank you. This actually takes us to the, hopefully everybody can see my screen now. This actually takes us to another slide that we look at later. But this really provides a bit of a checklist to understand under which category you might fall. So Sarah, for example, was talking about if a company was offsetting its carbon footprint, would that be classed as an A or a B? And just to work through that as an example, we would classify that as an A. And that is because the population, or the WHO here, is not necessarily it is underserved, and in this case that would be the planet or the environment. When it comes to benefiting stakeholders, they might not necessarily need to be underserved, but it is specifically targeting stakeholders as opposed to just acting to avoid, and therefore avoiding these important negative outcomes. Hopefully that explains things a little bit better, and you can work through this table to, when you're addressing each single impact, which you can do against the 5 dimensions that we have here, that should instruct you how you're meant to classify it. Now, enterprises have several different types of impacts, and using this method, you're able to look at each one individually. It can then help, as I said previously in the pre-recording, that this enables you to understand your performance, but then also to set goals. And what I would say to that is, if you, say, are looking at multiple impacts that your company has, you can understand whether or not your enterprise is termed as A, B, or C. If a company is contributing to solutions, if one of its impacts is doing that, then the whole enterprise itself would be classed as a C, because part of the business model is the fact that it is trying to contribute to solutions. So we talked as well about a sort of sliding scale, and I think that's how you can kind of see that sort of one builds on the other, like acting to avoid harm is the minimum. But if you're specifically benefiting people by creating positive, important outcomes rather than just avoiding negative outcomes, then you would be a B. But then if you're really contributing to a particular solution that, as you can see on this table, is at scale, it has a high degree of change, or it's long lasting, it doesn't have to be all of these, it can be one or the other, then you would be a C. So hopefully that helps explain you probably won't be hearing it, but that was building out a conversation that we were having previously. Sana, I don't know if it's also helpful just to answer a question that you also posed, because I think we might skip it. And you were talking about, there are sort of investors in the space that talk about investing for impact as well as investing with impact, and where does that fit on this scale? It's a great question, and just to shed a bit of clarity on that, I would say that investor contribution is assessed in actually a slightly different way, and I didn't include that on this particular slide, but I will actually just reshare my screen. Sorry to dart to and from everywhere. But just to give you a flavor of what an investor strategy may look like when it comes to understanding their impact, we provide an investor contribution table, which can help investors understand to what degree they are contributing to the impact of their investments. So that can range from, signaling that impact matters. So saying, that you want to influence capital markets, as I'm reading out here, as a whole, to incorporate impact into analysis and into pricing, then that's the sort of the minimum, and that would set you off as a number one. And then you can build on this by engaging actively or growing new or undersupplied capital markets, providing flexible capital. And obviously there's sort of different variations of that. And then that contributes to a matrix that we have designed so that investors can plot where they stand based on the ABC of their enterprises, but also the scale in which that they are indicating their strategy.
Great. Okay. Was there a question?
Comment.
Please go ahead, Clemmy.
I just want to share that we've used the impact management project with funds in New Zealand, so Community Foundation, who is exploring social enterprise and impact investing, and this approach of kind of walking them through the different ways that you could support, help them to decide where their appetite is for what kind of investment they wanted to make and which kinds of social enterprises they could support. So it was really good. And I can imagine an incubator or a organization that's supporting a bunch of ventures might like to think about whether it uses this approach to refine its focus on which kinds of social enterprises it works with.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, and I think like Joe, just what you mentioned right now in the explanation, like thinking about this as a bit of a spectrum and providing more of a strategic lens, to Clemmy's point, to thinking about the types of ventures and the types of areas that A, as an enterprise or as an intermediary you want to focus on, and B, as a potential investor thinking about what is the right fit. So I think the takeaway for folks is that while the IMP at a high level provides some best practices around how to think about impact, and then you can really start to break it down into more strategic outputs as well. So really thank you for that. Do you mind, did you stop share already? Okay. I'm just going to welcome, there's a few other people who've joined the call, and hopefully you have been able to plug in at the right moment. As always, we will share the recording with you, so in case you missed the beginning, you will get that. And of course the decks that have been shared. So hopefully all our technical things are sorted now too. I know that there were a few things at the start, so all good. I'm just going to go back to sharing, go back to the video basically. And Joe, you're right. I'm just going to go a little bit forward to when because we just had some technical things around the recording too. So I'm just going to go back to the right one, I believe. A little bit further maybe. Okay.
So yeah, okay. So as I mentioned,
A little bit further.
There is.
Let's say.
Yeah.
And maybe the distinction between benefiting stakeholders and contributing to.
A little bit further. Sorry guys, just bear with us. We pre-recorded this.
The process.
Okay. Oh, there we go. I think I may have skipped past a little bit.
More at a faster pace and with wider.
Okay.
On how the process works, and I think the framework here is really helpful. Shall I move to the next slide, Joe?
Yes, please. Thank you. So I just very quickly wanted to share with you two main strategies in which the IMP is continuing to build global consensus around impact measurement and management. And the first is through this facilitation of the IMP structured network. This is a group of 12 standard setting organizations, which you'll see here, that are working together to achieve more at a faster pace and with wider dissemination. Its objective is to build on these norms that have been co-created to date, and then bring these best practices into the work of their existing standards, metrics, indicators, etc. Next slide, please. This is quite a full-on slide, I appreciate, but I just want to show that how this group of organizations are working together to build on the vision section of this slide that I just wanted to really highlight here. And then please do have a look at the rest of the slide when these become available. So the idea is that all enterprises and investors should have the sufficient processes in place to measure their positive and negative impacts that matter to people and the planet, and also to disclose that data in a comparable way. As such, these organizations can then compare their impacts to understand how and where they could do better, and eventually improve their performance by increasing the positive and reducing the negative impacts. And so the rest of the slide outlines how we are working across the network in different work streams to achieve this vision. But my final slide is going to touch on the practitioner community. Thank you.
Maybe just before you move on to that, Joe, just a shout out to this slide in terms of the vision, because I think one gap that the IMP is filling is to really like unify what the impact world has to say around metrics and how we can speak a common language. So it's really incredible to see you guys pushing forward and bringing that to life in so many ways. So I'm sure everyone can dig into this and get some more details, but it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Please.
Thank you. So the practitioner community is otherwise a cluster of organizations that are bringing forward their experiences in impact measurement and management, whilst agreeing on and sharing their best practices. And as part of this consensus building effort, we have recently launched a new online platform called Managing Impact, which we've done in partnership with Harvard Business Review's Idea Lab. So this is a forum for tackling big impact management questions and sharing experiences as enterprises and investors work through their impact management processes. It's free to join. The current discussion topic is around investor contribution, but we have many more topics that will be coming to light in the coming months. So I very much encourage you and your involvement, your input as we continue to debate these big questions and learn about the activity of all of those using the IMP. So I hope that gives a bit of context and do
that had come to mind. And before I play that piece of the recording, maybe I'll just stop share for a second and ask anybody who is on the call, given everything that you've had a chance to absorb in the last 25 minutes or so, any questions that come to mind. We do have Joe on the line with us, so if there's something that leapt out to you, I have the slides if we need to refer to anything. So does anybody have any questions or comments or any feedback at this stage?
I can ask a question, Sana, if no one else is jumping in.
Please go ahead.
Cool, thanks. I wondered if you could chat to us about how you see theory of change fitting in. So do you think it's good to do a theory of change and then use the impact management project to make sure you're gathering insights across all of the dimensions of impact when you start to collect your data?
Thanks, Clemmy.
Thanks. And by the way, thank you very much for sharing your experience using the investor contribution strategy with Community Foundation, I think you mentioned. So it's really like, as somebody that is working for the Impact Management Project, every time we hear like where this stuff is being used in places that, you know, might not necessarily have been aware of beforehand, it's incredibly enlightening. So thank you. Theory of change, really, really good question. And to be honest, I'm not hugely sure of like exactly the best way, but let me give a little bit of insight, and I will come back to you if I think that there's anything that is sort of particularly useful to share. I would say that a theory of change is a very set and quite a prescriptive way of doing things. I understand, you know, obviously there's sort of ways to kind of like move and justify, you know, outcome from output, etc., or yeah, input from outcome even. It's there's very much a sort of, depending on what stage you are at of sort of where the intervention is, you can, I guess, manipulate slightly the way that you use the theory of change. What I would say is we certainly don't prescribe whether or not you should use it before or after. I would, I think if I was going to go about it, I would address the IMP dimensions and their data categories first, just to give me an idea of what the whole spectrum is, just to inform when you're creating a theory of change that you're, you know, really thinking about every single stakeholder, about the different degrees of scale, of depth, of duration, and how that would then apply. And also, I guess something that a theory of change doesn't necessarily address traditionally is something around impact risk, which is what I mentioned previously, which is, you know, what if the impact wasn't going to happen in the way that was expected, what are the risks around that? And what are the risks that contribute to that? And so I would say that a theory of change is a very like set standardized tool that is really helpful for interventions. But I do think that the IMP 5 dimensions can, as you said, can help make sure that you've considered everything to act as a checklist against your log frame, but then also perhaps giving a bit of insight into the extras that may not be so explicitly indicated in a theory of change log frame. Does that help?
Great, thanks. Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so if nobody else has any questions at this stage, I'm just going to flip back to the recording where we did go through some questions. And again, I'm just going to get to the point where we start to ask the questions, because again, not being very tech savvy, it's been quite fun for me to figure out how to start and stop videos. So just bear with me a second. Oh, my bad. Stop. I'll be right there. Okay, almost there.
Management.
Sorry, guys, just give me a second to like get to the question portion of this. Almost there. Perfect. Okay. Let's do this. The IMP's website has a Creative Commons license. What does that mean, and how do people know that they can use certain things or not use certain things?
Great question. Creative Commons licensing basically means that this is a public good. The whole of the IMP's guidance was designed with practicality in mind. Under this license, it means that you can use the content as much as you like, as long as that credit is given to the author. And we actually make that quite easy. We've got a lot of graphs that really illustrate our content, for example, and all of that sort of just has a bit of a credit thing there. But yeah, I'd say to the only thing that needs to be really worried about is giving credit to the author, and also not to make any changes to that content.
Okay, great. So just for anybody who picks up and says, oh, this is a valuable resource, so long as they cite that accurately, then that's quite perfect. Okay, that was a very practical question. The next was maybe, you know, given what the IMP has tried to create with having this collaboration between so many different entities, how do you manage all those voices in coming up with common language? Does it continue to be a challenge, or yeah, just what was that experience like? So I just wanted to pause at this stage, and the reason I asked that question around common language and different stakeholders is
because of, I guess, the prevailing trend around impact measurement and management in the past, around a lot of, oh, it's too hard, I don't know where to get started, etc. And I wanted to, first of all, give credit to the IMP for bringing together all the different stakeholders, but then also flesh out the importance of more common and standard language as we all try to better indicate the change that we're having. So just as context.
Well, I would say that to agree consensus with such a range of organizations is always going to be a challenge, just because there's lots of different perspectives in the room. But that actually means that if you can sort of, when you get to agreeing on the bits that are important, you know that you've really achieved something that's quite meaningful. We've been very, very set on engaging with these organizations as much as possible, whether that be through one-to-one consultations, whether that be through running workshops at conferences, whether that be through organizing webinars such as this. And we actually put together our own huddles, which addressed certain aspects of the norms to really flesh them out and make sure that they were solid. I think the way that we tend to run from it is that we listen to the voices in the market, and then we put something together, and then that is also debated. So I think that's kind of the process that we go through, listening and then being reiterative, and this stuff changes a lot. Like, it's, as I said at the beginning, it's by no means finished. And when organizations or individuals come forward with specific ideas, obviously we can't just change it like that, but it is very much factored into the work that we do going forward.
Sarah, as someone who supports content development, would you like to add anything to that?
Well, thank you, Sana. I would, because I want to just give an incredible shout out to the Impact Management Project, because what they have done is really a landmark in the evolution of this field.
Yes.
To coalesce both the content and really the buy-in and the sense of ownership among 2,000 plus organizations. I think it's more than that probably by now, where I think in the past there have been sort of fleeting rounds of stakeholder engagement when organizations set out to begin their thing, and then they'll sort of settle into an advisory committee, and they'll have a way for people to sort of send in comments or occasional stakeholder engagement rounds. But I do feel like, and those are good practices and have done good things. But I've seen a lot of those over the years, and the one that the Impact Management Project was head and shoulders above the others, just in terms of, I think, the grace with which the facilitators really heard what people were saying, and were incredibly they really recognized, I think, the value of all these different pieces, and have done a brilliant job of synthesizing them. So it was maybe a year after the huddles, or half a year after the huddles, when I got the opportunity to speak on a panel about the Impact Management Project. It was just, I had been in the huddles, and I guess they thought I knew about this stuff, so they had me come and do that. And it was in preparing for that and really sitting on the stage saying these things that I realized, as a practitioner, I need to promote this, because this reflects what all of us think and that we've agreed. It's not some other thing that is that thing over there that those people are doing. This is what we are doing, all of us.
Yes.
So that is, I think, genius. And I'm totally grateful to the Impact Management Project, and feeling very lucky to have now had a chance to help write some things which will be up on the Managing Impact platform soon.
Yeah, no, it's that, because just thinking about how you were describing the journey and also the vision going forward. So there's going to be a lot more of that collaborative spirit. So maybe we can switch to some of the questions that we talked about. And so you know, our audience who will be listening to this recording and that will be replaying it for on the 27th of June, they are incubators and accelerators that support relatively early, some growth stage entrepreneurs. And the theme that this falls under is helping them as organizations understand how they can measure and manage their impact. So maybe if both of you can think of some practical steps for how organizations that play more of an intermediary role can really understand how to measure their impact using the 5 dimensions as well as the ABC framework.
I have some thoughts here. So as I said before, the IMP's guidelines are designed to be used by all types of businesses to assess all types of impact. I think looking specifically at the earlier stage businesses, incubators, etc., it's necessary to understand that these early stage businesses typically have less data available, but the IMP can act as a starting point for understanding what impact data needs to be collected as sort of like a checklist. And not only that, but then you can also use this checklist, say, to set goals against your impact intentions. So not having all of the information right yet doesn't necessarily matter. But I think that's quite an important thing to know when you're getting started on this, especially if you're a very early stage business, because it doesn't have to be an impossibility or truly difficult. So we explain this a lot more going to the resources. We explain this a lot more in the enterprise section of the website. There's like 3 main tiers to the website. You've got what is impact, that really delves deep on the 5 dimensions. You've then got a specific section around enterprises, how they can set their goals and manage their performance. And then there's also a separate section for investors, which I would also encourage businesses to look at, just to see how this applies across different groups of stakeholders. In the enterprise section, there are a range of templates, and one that I was thinking about that might be particularly helpful is called the Impact of an Enterprise template. It's a spreadsheet, incredibly practical. It can be used across the 5 dimensions and the data categories, and it's a framework for collecting this data, which can sort of act as a starting point.
Yeah, I'm just going to pause for a second, guys, and switch the screen to just show you that template and where you can find it, because it could definitely be a good kickoff point. So I just have a screenshot in the deck that you will receive. And then just going to, so this is on the IMP website. How do enterprises assess their impact? There's lots of other resources, but this is the one being referred to, which is an Excel document. And so it lists out the 5 dimensions. And, you know, for those of us on the call and in our remaining time together in the seminars, if you wanted to start to take a stab at doing this for yourselves as an organization, it could certainly be an exercise that we could work through together. So I just wanted to stop and show you that and where to find it. And actually, in the interest of time, and sorry, Joe, I think you wanted to say something. Please go ahead.
Just one more thing. It's very, very strange watching yourself back, but I realized there was also something quite important that I didn't say, just in specific relation to early stage businesses, is that yes, they might not have all the data available, but another way to think of this is to collect third-party data. If you really are starting from scratch, collecting third-party data can help you understand what the challenges are, and they can still be collected against the 5 dimensions. So it's just another approach that can help set the goals to understand what it is that you want to achieve through your organization and your organization's impact against current challenges that exist for people on the planet. But yeah.
I was just going to say that in the interest of time, and since we also have the video from B-Lab to share, I'm just going to point everyone to the resources part of the deck that we will share with you later, where Joe has shared lots of really good tools that are on the impact management website that are a starting point for everyone to look at. There's also one paper, that was produced in conjunction with B-Lab that maps out how the B assessment can be integrated with the IMP norms, and that's going to be helpful, as you know, we hear from the next speaker. And then also Sarah from SVT Group, who's our other speaker on the call, shared some other resources to tap into, and both of them also have shared their contact information. So Joe, in the interest of time, I'm going to switch to the other presentation, and people, if you have any questions for Joe, just keep them coming. If not, I can take a second if anyone has anything. If not, I'm just going to switch to my other speaker. Does anyone have any questions before I do that? You can always put them in chat if you don't want to ask them right now. Okay. Does anyone want to say something? I feel like someone was off mute.
Sorry, that was actually me.
Okay, no worries. All right. So thank you so much to Joe and to Sarah for representing the Impact Management Project and sharing just the collection of information and resources and lots of really practical ways to get you started on this journey. Our next speaker is Anna Crabb, who is the General Manager of B-Lab Australia and New Zealand. And the recording that we did together, which you're going to be hearing now in the next, let's say 20 minutes or so, is about talking about what the B assessment looks like and how all types of organizations, whether you are set up as a for-profit or a non-profit or a small enterprise or a big one, you can use the B assessment as a way to kind of understand how impactful your business model is, and in a way complements what the IMP kicks off at a big picture. So I'm going to just play the recording from when our speaker Anna comes on board, and similar to what we've done with the IMP recording, I'll pause at certain points if there are questions. So I'm just going to press play. Press play. Okay, sorry guys, I potentially have to redo that. Okay. Accelerator impact measurement.
Hi everyone. As Sana said, I'm Anna Crabb. I'm the General Manager of B-Lab Australia and New Zealand. We are in the business of helping people in business use business as a force for good. So our ultimate vision is for this beautiful world to be kept beautiful and healthy and well. So in the words of our movement, it's about shared and durable prosperity for all. That's what we're really aiming for. And you guys, as being accelerators and incubators, working with so many different businesses, are in a prime position to really influence how this movement grows and develops around the world. So I'm very excited to be speaking to you today about what B Corp certification is and means, and get you excited about it. So that's me. Let's see if I can change the page. It's just being a bit low. Okay, so that's what I just went through. B-Lab, we're a not-for-profit, very importantly. So we are a not-for-profit all around the world. We have lots of global partners. We're in, I think, 26 countries at the moment, and lots of countries around the world have B Corps represented as well. And so what we're trying to do is really keep up and keep the momentum going for what business means in the world today. So we're seeing a really big shift at the moment. Consumers are interested in buying more from sustainable brands. Employees really want to work for businesses that have a responsibility.
Sorry, I just saw a question in the chat for Joe, but we'll get to that in a second, Bilal. Thank you for asking.
The broader community and to the environment, and investors are shifting their dollars in this direction also. So it's very much the momentum moving in the right direction. And it's moving in that way, I think, because of the really big challenges that we're facing in the world today. Climate change is very evident at the moment, particularly in a country like Australia, where you've got the real extremes of droughts and floods and all sorts of things going on. Very sad Great Barrier Reef. The climate change effect is really very evident. And we've got also growing income inequality as well. So these seem like really big macro issues, and the part that we play is to try and get business to help address these challenges, these really big challenges in their day-to-day work. And so this is our theory of change. I think you might have covered that in the program that you're doing. We really are aiming to set up a viable and scalable alternative to the economy as we see it today, or it traditionally has been a capitalist economy. So the starting point for B-Lab was around building a community of thousands of credible leaders, so they are the B Corps, and developing the market infrastructure like the legislation to enable business to be a force for good. We are creating tools so that millions of other business people can come along with us. And then hopefully our aim is to inspire billions of consumers, workers, investors, and others to really join this path with us. And finally, we'll get to our ultimate goal of the beautiful world of shared and durable prosperity. That's what we're aiming for. So I think this topic is around impact measurement. Impact management is definitely a part of what we do. The main tool that we provide, it's a free tool, easily accessible online, is the B Impact Assessment tool. And so that is basically your operating guide for running a sustainable business. It's a questionnaire that is tailored to the country you're in, the market you're in, the industry you're in, the size of your business, and it really helps you figure out how you can have more of an impact, a more positive impact on your workers, on your local community, on the environment, and have good, high-performing governance and transparency as well. And that's what we see as the 5 really important areas to have a positive impact as a business. It's a popular tool. Over 55,000 people have used the B Impact Assessment so far. We've had 100 plus organisations investing in developing this tool. So it's definitely one to sink your teeth into and get going. And that's really your first starting point if you want to be a B Corp. And I'll talk through the analytics in a moment, because as accelerators and incubators, this is quite relevant to you as well. So the benefits of using the B Impact Assessment is that it's comprehensive. So I just mentioned those 5 impact areas. There are other certification schemes available, things like fair trade. They're looking at a particular product, whereas the B Impact Assessment is looking at your business holistically, about all aspects of your operations and your business model. So it's quite comprehensive. It's really objective in terms of the types of questions it has in it, and it really challenges you to be better. When you fill in the questions, you get points for particular answers, and you're aiming to get as many points as possible. And the baseline to apply to become a B Corp is 80 out of 200. So that indicates that 80 is a high bar. Often businesses find it's challenging to reach, but there is so much potential for businesses to increase their impact with lots of ideas you can get from doing the B Impact Assessment. And as I mentioned, it's standard. It's standardized across the world, but you can go on different tracks depending on what side of business you are, where you're working. The questions adapt to reflect differences in what you're doing. And as I mentioned, it covers your operations, so how you run your business, and also your business model. So importantly for this Accelerator program that you're doing, it's adaptive to the business model, and you get rewarded if your business model inherently creates good.
So maybe Anna, before you move on from this slide, just to bring up our experience as Spring has even gone down the path of becoming a certified B Corp, just the point that you raised with respect to having the baseline, and then as you're answering the questions, recognizing, oh, actually, we could be doing this much better. It really, that was a big thing for us in that process, because we were small enough that you can make some of those, you can adapt a lot easier, but it's also the benchmarking and having like a path towards even getting more rigorous each time and each year that you do the assessment. So I think that's what I have appreciated a lot about the process. And maybe just no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm great to hear your experience in using that. It is a really useful tool, and that's why we kind of call it the new operating model for business, because it gives you those ideas and things to do that will have more impact.
Yeah, absolutely. The question that I was going to ask at this stage, hearing you speak about this and thinking about the impact management project, and when they went through the 5 dimensions of the who, what, why, how much, and the risks. And I know that there's a paper that brings those together, but is this a good point for maybe you to share your thoughts on how those 5 dimensions fit into the B assessment?
Yes, and I'm not an expert in this area, so that paper is probably more helpful, but my understanding is that this is really the how that would be covered in that area, because this is looking at your business model, so how you create the impact that you want to have, essentially that would fit in there. And it does have some quantification for some of those impacts as well. So there's a bit of an overlay that you can do together. It doesn't go to things necessarily, trying to think of an example of a business, say Tom's Shoes. You would get points for having a practice where you're giving items to people that need them. That would go into your score, but you wouldn't necessarily record in there how many people received the shoes and what sort of flow-on benefits it has. So it kind of complements my understanding.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, and the paper and the resource that we will share that the IMP has produced is kind of mapping out those dimensions. But again, it's about thinking about these approaches as complementing each other as well, and kind of creating more uniform ways of thinking about impact. Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, I'll go into the next one. As I've mentioned, there's the 5 impact areas that are covered in the B impact assessment. This digs into a little bit more detail about them. And the ones in blue are the ones with the impact business model areas. So those are ones where a business is set up to address a social or environmental challenge. You get bonus points for that, and that's those areas that are covered in that. So for example, with toxic reduction, we have a business called New Forest in Australia that is looking at carbon sequestration. So the purpose of it, this business is to invest in that. And so it's around reducing toxins in the environment. That's the purpose of the business. That's why it's an impact business model. Okay, getting...
You could go back one slide. And so with this one, just from your experience of having helped businesses get B Corp certified, let's say you're not necessarily on a mission to save the environment, or I don't know, your community aspect is limited because you are not really a product-based company. Do you guys see trends where people tend to land in these 5 areas?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I know the Australia and New Zealand B Corp community the best, and the thing that I've observed is that initially there were a lot of impact business model businesses. So the early adopters of B Corp certification were those that clearly you could tell that they were a B Corp. So businesses like HipCup, who were set up to stop the use of disposable coffee cups by having reusable barista standard coffee cups produced. And they would very rarely fit as an impact business model because that's why they were set up. Over time, businesses have seen the advantage of using the B impact assessment and incrementally improving what they're doing. And so businesses like the business I'm in right now is an accounting firm, a professional services firm called BlackRock. And so you would think a lawyer and accountant, how can they be B Corp? The things that they're doing is providing good quality employment opportunities to people. They're really clear in their reporting. They're very transparent in how they report about how they operate. They are actively reducing their environmental impact. So things like moving towards being carbon neutral, those sorts of things. And then they have a very active community engagement program as well. So I guess your more traditional kind of businesses can also be B Corps as well. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, it's good to know that the scope and spectrum of where people fit in is different, and it's kind of like a lens to just help you organize yourself in some ways to be more sustainable.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's keep going. I think the thing here is the real takeaway from this one is if you do the B impact assessment, don't be discouraged if you don't get 80 points straight away. The average score when companies do it for the first time is 55 points. So that means they don't meet the minimum bar to apply to become a certified B Corporation. But Dana, you've said it gives you ideas about what you can do in your business so that you can get above the bar, which is the 80 points. The B Labs work with you to help you try and increase your score as well by introducing new policies and practices into your businesses. And so the average score for B Corps is 96. Some of the highest performing B Corps, like Patagonia, around the 140 points. For probably the obvious reasons, they're very much a B Corp. They're incredibly transparent in their practices. They're really creative in terms of their environmental impact, their engagement by the community. So that's kind of a spread. There are some industries that don't pass through B Corp certification as well, but that's quite a small number. So they're the negative screens referred to there.
And I think the thing when the first time that you do it is you also realize that you need more information. There's certain, at least from our experience, there were certain things that were in my co-founder's head that I didn't necessarily have because we're a small team. So I think it's about really treating it as a process where it's iterative, right? So you're going to start somewhere and then, okay, I need to get this piece and that piece and then kind of build upon it. So.
Yeah, definitely. And here are some sample questions from the B Impact Assessment that it demonstrates this point exactly. So take the top left one around monitoring water use. You might not have thought about that in your business at all. It might not be really relevant. And so you might say, we do not currently monitor and record our usage. But then you go, okay, so there are different ways that we could actually improve our water use. So we could monitor it and record it. We can have specific reduction targets. We can have met those targets. So it kind of steps you through all the good practices and good to better to best practices. So it helps you think about what practices you can adopt, what policies, what kind of outputs from your business and the outcomes of your business also. Yeah. And very excitingly, we've got a partnership with the Global Compact Network, the UN Global Compact Network, and we're working very hard to map the B Impact Assessment onto the Sustainable Development Goals. Our wonderful world needs us to be working towards the SDGs, and this will just make it a bit easier for businesses to be able to track how they're going towards the goals, their contribution. So that will be coming in early next year.
Super excited for that one.
And I think this probably brings us to almost the last thing I wanted to cover, which is around the analytics. And so this basically is a platform that businesses can use to understand what's happening in their supply chains or what's happening in their portfolio of companies. It's something that I think would be useful for accelerators and incubators. So if you have a cohort that you're working with and you get them all to do the B impact assessment, you can see what their answers are, identify trends across the businesses in your cohorts, work out which areas you might need to work on collectively together to improve, and just gives you confidence as an accelerator or incubator about the likely sustainability of the businesses that you're working with as well. I think I've got a few photos in here. They're pretty little, but gives you a kind of idea of, helps you track annual updates. You can set KPIs for the businesses in your portfolios. You can benchmark performance across different cuts within your cohort. You can compare to different businesses in your country, to B Corps in your country, to other countries, other industries. There's all different ways you can understand how your businesses that you're working with are faring.
And all the information is anonymized, so like you could,
yeah, correct. That's right. Yeah, it's all anonymized, and this the B impact assessment is free and publicly available. The B analytic platform, there is a fee associated with this one here. And the last part of it is really, yeah, identifying opportunities for improvement and goal setting. So that was all on the impact management. Do you want me to keep going on that?
Please, yeah.
Okay. The next area is to go into the certified B corporations. So a good place to start is with the B impact assessment. And then, as I said, once you get the 80 points, you can apply to become a certified B corporation. And these basically are the leading businesses in terms of meeting the highest standards of verified social and environmental performance, public transparency, and legal accountability. So they're really focused on balancing purpose and profit. So I've got a few more than 2,800 now. We need to update that number.
It keeps climbing.
We can't meet the demand at the moment. It's great.
Great.
So, and it just shows, like, with the 150 industries, 60 countries, really resonating around the world, with all sorts of different businesses. And we do have that unifying goal, which is really exciting. So what we hear from businesses about why they want to become B Corps is that they like to have the objective third-party validated trust stamp, the B Corp mark, that they can use, because there's a lot of greenwashing that goes on in the world, those lengthy sustainability reports with all their nice pictures. This is actually a genuine mark you can trust that you actually are doing good. Second is brand value. So businesses, they associate with the B Corp, consumers do, employees do. So it gives value to the brand. Attracting and retaining talent. We've certainly heard from B Corps that once they become B Corps, the status of their candidates is much higher than previously, and also to maintain mission, so making sure that your business keeps on track. And the process is do the BIA. If you're operating in a country where there is a benefit corporation status, you need to opt into that, and then you make it official. So you sign up to what we call the Declaration of Independence, pay your dollars, and off you go.
And then the world changes.
And the world changes, and then it's probably a little bit too much detail to get into, but this is the benefit corporation is the legal status, which really locks in the idea of stakeholder governance. So thinking about all your stakeholders rather than just running business for your shareholders for short-term gains. So there's lots of businesses in the US shown here that have adopted this legal status.
I was going to ask at this stage, Anna, with the benefit corporations, like they recently passed.
I'm just going to pause that for a second, guys. There's a question in the chat that I need to. Yes, Bilal, to confirm, the B assessment is free, but B analytics has a charge to it. So. I'm just going to push
legislation and
to.
They're the ones that have read. yeah, so that's all I had to share with you today. I'll just go back to the theory.
Guys, so the rest of the video goes into some questions that Anna and I went through, but before I maybe play the rest of that, I just want to pause and ask if anybody on the call does have any questions or any comments on the role of the B assessment, how it can support, or any other comments. All good. Okay, so I'm just going to power through the questions and then we'll get back, Bilal, in a second once we've just wrapped up the B Lab portion of this. So let me just go back to sharing that screen and we will get on to... There we go.
Impacts as well. So yeah, definitely.
Awesome. And would you say the same kind of score is just as relevant for intermediary or service providing organizations? Like, should we all, everyone needs to aspire for an ATES as a baseline score, but how hard is it for people who are not necessarily as product based or as environmentally focused, etc., to get to that minimum?
Well, there's a real spread of scores for different types. Like, there's a different spread of scores for like businesses actually, because say for the example here, a lot of our B Corps in Australia and New Zealand are professional services firms, and their B impact scores are really quite wide ranging. So even within your industry, there are ways that you can continue to improve your impact through different policies and practices. So the types of businesses that are impact business model businesses, they definitely tend to be higher. But there are a whole range of scores that you can achieve if you're not in those types of businesses.
Right. And then have you, thinking about maybe some of the examples of the other incubators and accelerators that have gone through this process, do you, or have you tended to see then maybe the ventures that they support also deciding to become B Corp certified?
Yeah, this is something that we're seeing with larger companies as well that want to bring their suppliers into the B Corp way of thinking. So we're seeing, in a few ways that kind of cascading down. So we're seeing it from multinationals who want it through their subsidiaries. We're seeing it from companies with different arms of their business, and then accelerators and incubators as well. We work closely here in Melbourne with the Melbourne Accelerator program and educate and inform and work it in. The other way is through impact investing funds. So we've worked with the Impact Investment Group here in Australia through their Giant Leap program. And one of the requirements for those businesses that receive investment is to become B Corp certified.
Right.
So there's lots of ways to influence, businesses becoming B Corp.
Especially thinking about your theory of change, right? And like creating, moving people along the spectrum. So that's pretty, and it's again something for people who are on the call to consider as part of the support for the ventures that you get. And maybe just one final question from me is, and it might come up for people on the call who realize that the B Corp certification is currently for for-profit entities. If organizations are not set up as for-profits, then can they still do the B assessment? That's one. And then in the future, would there be a B Corp certification for not-for-profit entities as well?
Yeah, it's really fascinating. This comes up quite a lot. So to go to your first one, yes, the B impact assessment is useful for any type of organization because it basically helps you operate in a way that minimizes your impact. So it improves your impact. So yes, definitely. The certified B corporations are for-profit businesses.
Right.
And so that means your majority of your income needs to come from trade and you need to be in a competitive market. So we have had a few cases where there have been government business entities who are in a competitive service scenario where they have been certified. And we've recently had a social enterprise who's registered as a charity in New Zealand certified because 95+% of their income was from trade. So the main focus is really businesses, like your profit businesses. However, there are a few exceptions.
But as a baseline tool, everyone can do this to kind of understand where they stand. The actual certification though continues to be for entities that are set up as regular corporates or businesses. Yeah, perfect. Okay, I mean, I think, so I'm gonna stop the video because I think that's when we just got into final comments, etc. So that was the video from our speaker, Anna Crabb from B-Lab. We did have a question from Junaid, so from Bilal. So I'm just going to read that out. And Joe, this one was for you. And of course, if anybody on the call also has other comments, please jump in. So I'm just going to read it out. The question is that for organizations like us, we can leverage existing data, similar organizations, so to get the ball rolling. His question is, are there any repositories of impact reports where we might be able to find similar organizations? To give you background, Takhliq is a early idea stage university-based incubator. And what he's trying to grasp is, are there other impact reports done by other such university incubators that you may have come across as part of all the people that the IMP has spoken to, or, you know, have maybe used the framework? So Joe, do you have any thoughts that come to mind of where they can start looking?
Yeah, sure. Firstly, Bilal, thank you so much for asking that question, because hearing sort of the needs of the market, such as one like this, is just something that really helps to, I guess, build up the resources that we have. I think the simple answer, but I would like to check this, is certainly there's nothing that falls under the impact management project that is like a repository for this stuff. Funnily enough, you ask, we're actually going to create a blog post at this stage, which will signpost to different organizations that are using the IMP norms in their impact management and measurement processes, such as reports or just articles, opinions, etc. We are going to have that, and whether that becomes a more sort of standalone section in our website is a bit TBD, but we thought we'd kick off with a blog and see how organizations respond to that. So I can certainly let you know when that's up and running. We also, we have something sort of for investors, which is called our Impact Class Catalogue, and that's available to view on our website. And that actually gives a list of investors that are actively disclosing their impact class, like where they sit on that matrix that I was describing earlier. And for separate portfolios, and funds that they are managing. My only other idea was, have you considered looking at B-Lab? I haven't. Well, what I can say is that they certainly have a directory, a catalogue of enterprises that are certified, which gives a little bit of information about them, and then we'll signpost to their website and I believe sometimes impact reports. So for the actual enterprise side of things, whilst it will give you sort of data that traditionally falls under the IMP norms, that's not what we're trying to do anyway, but it will certainly point you to a good amount of impact reports. But hopefully that's a good place to start. And let me come back to you if I have thought of anything else there.
Perfect, thank you. I think maybe just to add on to that, and Clemmy, feel free from your side as well. Just from my experience, there are not a whole range, like I think that by the last count, there's about over 2,000 incubators and accelerators across the world. I don't know many of them that very actively talk about their impact. And so that, because as we've talked about, there's data issues, there's, you know, there's a lot of education, etc. But I think that the resources that Joe mentioned, and also I like the idea about looking at the directory of other B Corps as potentially a place to get some more information on impact reports, could certainly be a place to start. Bilal says, thank you. Thank you so much for asking the question, Bilal. Does anybody else have any questions or thoughts? I mean, you know, one of the goals of us having speakers today from the Impact Management Project and from B Lab was to give everyone a flavor of the, like I mentioned, well-established global frameworks that are tackling impact management. And there's more and more coming together of, again, the language and the thought process, as you guys have been through some steps around mapping out your theory of change. And I'm just going to take a peek to see who's on the call and might ask one or two of you to share that. I think Aulia has dropped off, but I was going to ask someone from the Instellar team if you feel like sharing just what your experience has been to date, thinking that you're, you know, you guys have mentioned going down the B Corp path, and now having heard about the Impact Management Project. If anyone from the Instellar team would like to share, I'll give you a moment to do that. And then we have, perfect, okay. And then Clemmy has also just shared a resource that we can certainly.
Actually, sorry, not the one I thought I was sharing. Sorry, sorry for that. I have seen an interesting publication out of Scotland where they've surveyed a bunch of accelerators to ask them about how they're measuring their impact, and they've done some summaries on a few of them and how they're doing it. And accidentally, I've done the one that's from the for-profit world. But I'll see if I can find that link and share it. If not, I recommend going and looking at what research Scotland's doing.
Okay.
If you're looking for examples.
Thank you for sharing. So yeah, I can see that we have Nukra from the Instellar team. Do you feel like sharing your experience around VLab, or any questions or comments on that?
Hi everyone. So yeah, thank you for the seminar, and we at Instellar here are still working on our B Corp certification, and so far nothing, no difficulties whatsoever. Our business analysts are working on it, but the process are currently being withheld because we got some other projects going on and other programs going on. So, and from the last assessment, I think we scored around. I think we scored around 90 on the B impact assessment, so it was pretty good for a start.
Great. And hopefully you have a little bit more context today around how you can weave in the dimensions of the IMP as well, to, you know, because again, there's, as we pointed to, there's a resource that maps out the 5 dimensions with the B assessment. So definitely something to look at. And I don't have the resources here, but they're on the other slide, and that's something that we'll share with everyone. So maybe, thank you so much, Nugra, for sharing your experience. I appreciate that. Does anybody else have any final thoughts or comments about anything that we've covered today? Okay, well, I guess on that note, we'll wrap up. And first of all, thank you so much, Joe, from the Impact Management Project, for being here in the flesh and being able to share more, in addition to having taken the time, both you and Sarah Olson, for pre-recording the session with me. I really appreciate your insights and all the work that you're doing, as well as a big shout out to Anna, who you just heard the recording and her voice, but was not able to be here. It was a really pleasant conversation as well. And I hope that more people are encouraged, whether or not you choose to become a B Corp, to at least go and try the free tool around the B assessment, as Anna mentioned, to think of it as an operating guide for how a sustainable business can run. I also thoroughly encourage everyone to go to the Impact Management Project website, which has so many resources. It's pretty amazing. Like, sorry, can someone who's on, yeah, please put yourself on mute. Thank you. Yeah, there's just so many resources here under that section, and like tons and tons of information to really allow you to start to get deeper. I think that it's important to recognize that there's tools that you and templates that you can use for yourselves as organizations, but then also that you can really start to introduce the ventures that you support to, in case they haven't gone down that path yet. As always, we will share with you the deck that we went through today, which includes contact information for all our speakers in case you have any follow-up questions or comments, so feel free to do that. A template on the website that allows one as an enterprise to assess impact.
Can other people hear Sana? I seem to have lost the audio.
Oh, really sorry about that. It seems that I lost my connection. Apologies. I was just wrapping up to say that we'll share the recording with you. We'll share the deck with you, and also feel free to reach out with any follow-up questions that come to mind. As next steps for our time together, we have, I think, 3 more sessions that will allow us to dive into their more seminar style, so we can actually talk through what your action plans around creating an impact management system for your organization look like. I'll follow up with some more specific details over email, but I believe that session is July 25th. But in between now and then, I can send some more information. Thank you so much, Clemmy, as well, for being on the call. I know it's late for you, so I appreciate you being there on the evening time to support, and also helpful to hear your experience of using the Impact Management Project with the Community Fund, but then also how you use it to support ventures that you work with to help them measure and manage their impact. So on that note, if nobody else has any questions, I would like to say enjoy the rest of your evenings, afternoons, mornings, wherever you are. Thank you as always, and yeah, we will talk soon.
Hey, Sana, I have a question.
Of course, yes.
So I know Springs is a for-profit, right? Have you
Yes.
guys looked at, you guys are not a B Corp, are you?
We are a B Corp, yes.
Okay. Okay. And have you taken the B Corp certification assessment as well?
Yes, you have to, in order to become a certified B Corp, you have to go through the B assessment. Like you can do the B assessment independently of becoming a B Corp, just as a way to understand how impactful your business model is. And then we decided to continue going down that path to certify, which builds on the assessment that you've done already, where you work closely with someone from B Lab to go through your answers and to help you get to that next level.
I see. So if I understand correctly, becoming a B Corp does not require certification. So you can become a B Corp, you can register as a B Corp in the legal sense, and then you go for the certification. Is that correct?
I think what you're getting confused about, Bilal, is the benefit corporation. So that's more of a legal entity that's currently only available in the US and in one province in Canada. And I believe in Australia and New Zealand, as Anna mentioned, they're working on legislation to pass that. So that's the legal entity that more explicitly allows a social enterprise to work in the way that it needs to. That's something different. So when you decide to go down the path of becoming a certified B Corp, you get, at least in the US at the time, you got the option to opt in to also change your legal status to become a benefit corporation. So they are, it's not that you have to do both at the same time, it's an opt-in. And not all, so you can be a benefit corporation without being a certified B Corp. Basically.
And you can be a certified B Corp without being a benefit corporation, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. That's what I want to check.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so we're 2 minutes over, so we're going to wrap up today's session. Thank you all again, and yeah, I appreciate your patience with some of the technological things around playing pre-recorded videos, etc. Working with different time zones is, yeah, quite challenging for all. So thanks for your patience. Thanks, Joe, for being on the line again, and we will talk to you all soon. Take care. Bye.
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 Thanks, Anna.